Hello, welcome to FOPY'sCreations. I was just trying to warm up here. Got the heater on, but it's not getting anywhere. Okay, today I've decided I'm going to make, what would you call it? Not an oven mitt, a pan holder. And this is a great project again for using up your scraps. So what I'm doing, I managed to find some cool dating pieces in these sort of colours. So I'm going to stitch all of those together. Then I'll be cutting a nice square piece that will fit my hand. So it's a good judge, because I mean we've all got different size hands, but if you put your hand out splayed like this on your fabric, and then make sure you've got a good couple of inches either side, and the other way as well, and you know then that it's going to cover, your hand will be covered and you won't get burnt when you're holding a pan. And to line this, to make it heat proof, at least, well, it works for me, you know, as long as it doesn't get wet, an old blanket. I've got an old blanket here that I use for things like this, and it's fantastic insulation for it. You can buy wadding, but that obviously can work out expensive. But this is the blanket of this one someone gave me. I've got another blanket that I've had for years and years and years. And because generally now, most times people use quilts, don't they? So they don't always use a blanket. I have to say though, I've gone back to sheet and blankets because I get so hot, I like to take layers off rather than just fling the quilt off. But anyway, so that's the wadding. So now I'm going to sew the pieces together to get my piece of fabric for each side. And then you need to either make a very thin loop that you can hang it on, or you can put ribbon on, or whatever. You've got a bit of bias binding. And obviously I'm only going to make one, but generally you make a pair, don't you? So I'll do the one today just to show you how I do that. Right, let's get myself ready. Okay, I've measured for my hand, and it turns out that I need a piece 22 centimetres square. I keep flitting between inches and centimetres depending on what measure I'm using, but most of my measurements now do seem to be metric. They're in centimetres. Right, so first of all we're going to create a piece of fabric. Let's make sure my smallest piece is 22. Yeah, it's bigger than 22. So I mean, I could run this up quickly on the serger, but I'm going to decide I'm going to do it on here. Serger is always that much quicker, but not everybody's got one of those, so I don't always like to just do it in a serger. Excuse me. Right, we're in running stitch. Yep. Back. I'm doing quite a small seam because I want to keep as much fabric as I can. I don't want to lose it all in the seam. I'm hoping my machine sounds slightly better. I did give her a bit of oil. These are all pieces that I had to make my herringbone quilt. You can see I'm not using pins or anything, but I'm fairly confident that I'm going to be okay with that. I've got a piece of cotton there. That's it. So these little projects are great to run up, and it feels good that you're using scraps rather than going out and buying that expensive material. I nearly used some really lovely fabric that I bought at the charity shop, but it seemed a waste for another mitt that might get burnt, so I decided to use some of this. Depends how posh your kitchen is, really, but mine's not, as you know, or as most of you know. Here we go. So I've got one piece. Make sure my hand's okay. Yep, definitely. I've got to, again, keep the seams narrow all the way around so that I don't use up too much of that. And in a minute I shall cut that to square. Let's do the other one. Right, so that's the second piece. Just push my machine away for a minute. Of course you can make these, it's circular or in a heart shape or something, but a square, it guarantees you more or less that you're not going to burn yourself because it's covering all round. Right, what I want to do now is iron those seams flat. By the way, I weighed myself today and lost another £2. So going back to when my doctor first, or last time he weighed me and gave me a look, yeah, I've lost about £8. So that's not bad. I'm pleased with that, and I really feel it. I can really feel better. You're probably all fed up hearing about it, but me telling you reminds me that I've got to be good. Again, while I'm doing this bit, I know you can't see my head necessarily, but unfortunately that's how it is. Alright, so let's press these open. Fiddly because it's such a narrow seam. Got to get something in there to open it. That's it. There we go. It's better to do to do this, to press it, because obviously it's all sort of bunchy underneath when you put it all together. And that would be easier to use. Another one of my pokey tools. Get in there. I have to say, I think this would be very hard to do with a normal, your normal domestic iron. This helps you get into little things like this, and you can see more of what you're doing as well. I was very fortunate that one of our viewers bought all of my vintage key rings. I was very pleased with that, and she's very pleased with them as well. And they went to America, so I was a bit worried about the postage, but in the end it wasn't too bad, and she was happy. So she was saying that she can't find old keys like that in America, so that's why she wanted them all. She did say some of them she's going to use for display, I think, and some she will use the key rings for. But even so, it was about, I don't know, 15 key rings, I think, that I sold. So, result. Thank you very much. I've still got my things sitting on eBay. I didn't seem to go very far, but never mind. I've said time and time before, it makes sense to sell my things because I'm going to be swamped otherwise, or I'll be thinking, why am I making things that I've just got to find space for. Very close to the edge on this one. What I'm going to do once they're all 3 layers are together, I'm going to top stitch just to make it look a bit more quilted. Okay, so we've got 2 pieces pressed now. Now I'm going to cut them into a square. Okay, off camera I decided to add another piece on. As I've started to measure, I was thinking this is getting a bit tight, so I'll add another piece, and I know I've got plenty. So now we're going to cut the square, 22-inch square, and maybe leave a little bit, or let's make it 23, just to make sure we've got enough for seams. Right, now we mark on here the 22. We could do it in the middle to make sure we get enough. Actually, try and sort of make the lines central-ish as well, depending on how fussy you are, really. So we mark there, and I know we're going 23, aren't we? So there, round, there, 23 there, and we got very close there actually, so I don't want to use in pieces. There, and make sure that's the same again, 23, oops, it's just a little bit off. Right, now we need to put some lines in. And we don't really have to do this. If you're using your roller cutter, you should be able to just hold it against the dots. But sometimes it's a safeguard, same as my adding another piece of fabric. It's a safeguard really, just to rather than be disappointed later and think, oh, I should have had a bit more fabric. Okay, this is quite tight on the top on this one. We go again. Right, I'll stand up for this so you can see the less of me now. Right, just to cut the line. That's it. I don't always get on very well with the roller cutter. It depends on the fabric, but very often it doesn't cut through in one go. I just cut the blanket with it and it was fine. Even my FOPY'sCreations, and that's supposed to be titanium blade, but it doesn't always cut first time. It's very frustrating when it's supposed to make life easier. That's one. So even that doesn't, it keeps leaving and missing a bit, and I never understand why. When you think it's rolling round, you think it should cut all the way around. Alright. See, these pieces now that are left, I could make the loop out of. I might do that. I was going to use, I've got some silky bias binding that I found in the charity shop, a huge roll, and I thought there's an opportunity to use it, but save that for something else, and I use this. See, it's struggling again. Sometimes think scissors will be quicker. I was watching a lady the other day, and she was saying she doesn't like using the rollers at all, especially in dressmaking. And I'd imagine in dressmaking it's quite fiddly getting around the armholes and things. But other people just would swear by them. There we go, it's my 2 pieces of fabric. What I now do is put them on top of my blanket piece and the bottom. Let's make sure that's, make sure your blanket, I mean that's 22 and excuse me, on the outside is now 23, so it should cover it plenty. So that way. Okay, so now we've got all 3 layers together. Already you can feel that it's going to be nicely padded. I'll put that there for a second. This is the roll I was talking about, the roll of bias binding. It's silky, and it's a huge roll. Look at it. How could I leave? I couldn't go and leave that behind, could I? There must be some project for that at some point. I'm just going to put it back out on the shelf now. I think it was about €2 or something. It's just huge. All those sort of things you can use for weaving and stuff as well. One thing I didn't mention is that we need to make an edging for it, like a piping, and that for that you use the bias binding as well. But I don't know, do I want to do it in that brown? It would be simpler because it's all ready to go. I don't think I've got another colour I can use. No, I'm going to use that. I'm going to use the brown for that, and I'll make a loop with the other. So I need, obviously 22 times 4 is 88. So we'll cut a bit more than 88. 48. And 48. Obviously will be 96. But I'm going to cut a little bit more than that just to make sure. I can always trim it off after. That's it. Right, put that back. So we need to, this is actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to stitch all the way around just to hold this in place so that it doesn't move when I'm putting the bias on. Again, right near the edge. I'm not really making it up as I go along, it's just remembering what to do as I go along. For silly reasons today, I didn't make myself any notes. Leave it quite near the edge because otherwise the stitching will show outside of the bias. And obviously now, because I'm going to be doing a dark brown, I'm going to have to change my thread. I think I've already said that I was going to do some stitching across as well, so I'll do that while I'm still on the same thread, obviously. See, doing that because I'm on blanket, it's already pushed it out of shape. I should have put the clips on. I shall pause soon and go and have some lunch. I haven't eaten since yesterday, so it's part of my fasting, which is why my diet's still working. Right, okay, so that's stitched all around. Right, now that that's stitched down, I can see it's pushed the fabric off, so I'm going to trim it back because I've got a little bit of an overlap. So I'm glad I allowed that little bit more now, so just trim that back a bit. Better. Right, now I want to mark some lines on here, and then so that I've got lines to follow when I do the top stitching to make it more quilted. There's lots of sewing hacks I've said to you I was going to try some of them. There's some I just think, to be honest, I keep thinking, oh, I'm happier doing it the way I'm doing it. And this was one. It was measuring, having something to guide you to stitch as you go, but I'm quite happy to do this with being a heat erasable pen. it disappears after anyway. So right, let's see what I've got. I need, on there. I'll do one every 5 centimetres, so that's what's good to measure with this. It's easy. And there. And then we'll do the same this way. 5 centimetre spacing. Okay, let's put the lines in so I can follow it. I might actually, it might be better if I use my roller foot. So I'm going to get that out of my folder, and it should move across it easier then. That line didn't come out very well. Do that again. So if you're not very good at sewing in straight lines, it's a much better way to do it as well. I'm not too bad normally. It doesn't help. Sorry, it doesn't hurt to be safe though, does it? There we go. Another one. Now you can see it taking shape. I mean, if I've not really done any free motion embroidery, but if I did, then you could always do a squiggly quilting pattern on there. But I'm doing this. There we go, that tiny bit in the corner. I don't know if you can see that or not, but there are my lines. Let's get the roller foot, so let's change foot. Right, where are you? Rolled hem foot, zigzag. Some of these I forget what feet I've got, and I'm thinking, oh, I could use that, but no, it's not for the same thing. Braiding, straight stitch, overcast, edging, welting, fringe, knit foot, roller foot. There we go. So you can see that's just got a whoops. It's got a little wheel on it. It just makes the fabric roll across the foot roll across the fabric easier. We change that. Okay, so let's start with this line. The good thing with this is because it's a transparent foot, so you can see the lines as well. Just line your needle up with your line. Good. It's always good to check the other side, make sure the tension's okay. So there's 3 to go, but they're getting shorter obviously. Has my bobbin run out? I'm not sure. Looks like it might have done. You're getting used to this now, aren't you? My bobbin running out. I'm a bit good at this threading lark. There we go. Right, where was I? The last time I did this is when I made Sharon some oven mitts or pan holders. So it's such a nice, quick, I'll say quick, depends on who's sewing, a nice, easy-ish gift to do. You don't really need a pattern, you just need measurements. Obviously this is simpler, but for Sharon's I made like owl faces, and they were quite cute, but obviously a bit more fiddly, took a bit more time. Nipple my threads. So next we're going to pin the bias binding around the edge. I've got to think about the loop, haven't I? I must admit the ones that I use in my kitchen I haven't got a thing to hang them on, I just keep them in a drawer. And then quickly just run that up, it won't take a minute. This is about 3.5 centimetres wide, this, but it's not essential that you do the same, you can do it smaller. Just press that, bring your edges in together, so you've got a piece like that, and then just fold it in half. So you could use anything, ribbon or anything, but if you want it to coordinate with what you've got, find a small piece of fabric the same and then just make this. As you can see, it doesn't take long, it's more time trimming threads and stuff than it is sewing it. I think what I'm going to do is use my pinking shears and just to trim the ends, just to make sure they don't, because if it's hanging up it might gradually work its way through. But one, two. Right, so now we've got a loop, and that needs to be pinned right on the corner. In fact, I think I'm going to stitch that on rather than pin it, because the pins would be too big. And I'm going to do a couple of running backwards and forwards just to make sure it's strong. There we go, so that's your loop. We've got to fold it inside while we put the bias on, and then hopefully it will pull that back a little bit. But okay, I think this might be a bit slippery, but let's see how we go. I'm going to use pins because it's very narrow. So my pin. Put the, because as you know with a bias you've got two folded edges in like we did for the loop, so the first folded edge meets the edge of the project. Put the pins in the fold and then just do that all the way around. I do have a foot I think that I can do this with, but I haven't used it enough to be able to say I'm confident with it, so I'm going to do this just for this one. Corners are always the fiddly bit. You have to sort of fold them like you're folding sheets on a bed. So there's another way. You could just stitch all round, then turn it inside out. I just think the edging just finishes it off nicely. And if you already do this and know of a better way of doing it, I'd love to, send me a little video or something. I see people doing it in all different ways. Excuse me. I'm here to learn as you are. Or share, skill sharing as they call it, and I'm not even sponsoring them, Skillshare. When we get to that corner, we'll stitch that differently, so let's just cut that off. So once that's stitched down, I have that all the way round. But now I've got to change my thread, haven't I? It's dark brown I need now. Have I got dark brown? Watch this space. I think that's the one. Okay, I've changed my thread and we're ready to go. I'm just going to follow that fold on the bias binding all the way round. So the corner's a little bit tricky. So it's very handy to have something like this to just to hold it down when you're doing little bits like this with fine edges and seams and things like that, just to hold it in place. On the last bit now. This took a little bit longer than I would like because it's the thickness slows you down a bit, and I haven't got obviously an industrial machine. Right, I'm going to stop there for a minute because I need to stitch the corner there with there, just to stitch those together, those two ends. It's quite a slippery bias binding, this one. If you find this difficult, you can just stop and hand stitch it if you like. I made harder work of that than I needed to. I've just suddenly thought to myself, hang on a minute, that doesn't look right. As it is, I think I'm going to have to do a hand stitch on there because I couldn't stop that from slipping. I'd have been better to have made the bias binding out of the same fabric. There you go, you live and learn. Okay, so I'm just doing this in the hope that it will fold over better. As I always say, don't always do as I do, because I don't always get it right. And when you do it, obviously make sure you keep the bias binding out the way and that you don't cut that as well. So we get with that now. Okay, so now I've got enough to fold it over, I am pinning down all the way round so that I can just go round one swoop and stitch it down. So it's very narrow, this bias. In an ideal world I would have made it a bigger one, and next time I will know. I think this is because last time I made one I did make my own, and it did make it easier, and this has just reassured me that I was right to do that. And so the corners are tricky, especially when you choose a silky bias binding that wants to fray. Some people would hand sew this, like hem it, and they put the other side of the bias on. You sew one by machine and then the other side. I can't get this corner to go right. I think I might have to come back to that and hand sew it. I normally enjoy putting bias binding on. I think mainly because it just gives a nice finish. That corner's definitely have to be hand stitched. If for some reason it just will not lay. There you go, that's what it's going to look like. Now I'm going to I've got two corners for some reason that will not fold properly, so I'm going to stitch all the others and I'm going to hand sew that afterwards. And then I'll show you when I'm finished. Take the time to make sure you catch it all. So I really couldn't have used the clips on this, they would be too bulky, and it's sort of a too small a project to do. There we go, it's one side done. I'll do this one, and as I say, then I'll tuck that in and hand sew it. So ideally you should better do the corners and go all the way round, but I've made some bad choices today. Do all the corners I think by hand. This will be title, I think, thumbnail I'm going to be put on this is how I made a oven mitt and lessons I learnt. I might have made these mistakes because I am hungry, but anyway, that is the oven mitt. I've just come back, finished, well, so just come back about half an hour ago. Had my lunch, and I just realised after I'd switched the camera off that I hadn't done the stitching on the other diagonal, so I did that as well off camera. But you saw how I did it, and now I've hand stitched the other corners in a bit tidier, but as I said before, I'm not sure I would use it again. Not very easy. Maybe that's why it was in the charity shop, because it wasn't that easy. It's probably alright for something thinner, to be honest. I should really have thought it's a slightly thicker fabric. It needed a wider edging on it, but I've made it work. It's usable, and I'm quite happy with it actually. So I think it's come out better than some others I've made, believe it or not. Apart from the edging, and the loop works perfectly well. So yeah, so hopefully you've learned by some of my mistakes, and I know I certainly have. So if you've got any questions, then just obviously ask in the comments or whatever, and hopefully you can make one a little bit tidier than mine. But as I say, it's functionable, and when you think about what it is, it's just to pick up a pan, stop your hand getting burnt. I'd just like to try and show you things to show that as well, that you don't need to be perfect. There's a lot of people that sew out there that make us feel intimidated by sewing, and you just need to know that if you can make something, whether it's perfect or not, you'll be happy with it, you can use it or wear it or whatever, and that's the most important thing. What if it makes you happy and it's relieving some of your stress you might have or anything like that? That's why I love sewing. It's just, I can just lose myself here and just really enjoy it. So there you go. Okay, so I shall see you on the next project. I'll have a look at my list to see what to make next. As I say, I've got quite a long list, and it's always working out what to do next. Okay, look after yourselves and see you next time. Bye.